Oh my phone. Not in there.
Okay, so when we talked last week, first of all, hello and welcome to Grace Home Church. My name is Rob Palermo, and I'll be teaching today. And as we discussed last week, we were talking about Hebrews chapter 3 and how that I really felt that Hebrews 3 and 4 were very, very important to the practical matters of Christianity. In fact, they definitely are. And we're doing like a verse-by-verse study, a verse-by-verse teaching of this. Not trying to make the way down with too much overbearing. I mean, I'm doing a series right now on the book of Hebrews. And a lot of times what I don't like about series is sometimes pastors take up too much of a year to teach maybe one book of the Bible or something like that. I remember one time I visited a church in Florida where a pastor had been teaching the book of Romans for 3 years and he still wasn't done. So is the Bible dense? Absolutely. Is it inexhaustible? Absolutely. But does your audience have limited patience? Yeah, probably. So what I'm going to do is not belabor this. So already we're on chapter 3, and I've probably been only teaching it for 3 or 4 weeks now. I only started when I got to Florida here myself at the beginning of the month. So we're moving through quite rapidly. But as I was saying, this involves a teaching that is paramount to everything, every single thing your life touches as a Christian, every single thing, every little life juncture this affects. Your overall attitude toward the Lord and toward spiritual things is affected by this. So we're talking about belief and what that really means and what that speaks to in terms of our eternal state. You know, in the Old Testament, a lot of things were based on outward things. Now, in the New Testament, and so saying it, this is not by no means exhaustive, but it deals with a lot of things that are going on internally with us. What matters to God is what's going on internally, and what matters secondarily to God is what's going on externally in our lives. He understands that we need to get down to the core center of our being, and which always involves matters of God, and it gets down to the core matters of our interaction with God, which always entails belief and faith. And we're going to discuss and put some more meat, hang some more meat from those bones, so you really understand what we're getting at over here. Okay, so. Lord Father, help me not to be self-conscious about how I'm preaching today. Help me just to preach it and to just to show people something real today, show them something that will help them. Now, we're going to deal with a passage of Scripture that that connects to Hebrews 3 here. In fact, remember this, Hebrews 3 and 4 connect to Joshua 13 and 14. Okay, 3 and 4, 13, 14. It's like you're adding a 1 in front of each one of the chapter numbers. So always remember that. Hebrews 3 and 4 connect to actually, I'm sorry, the book of Numbers 13 and 14. I don't know what I'm doing here. I apologize. The book of Numbers chapters 13 and 14. Let me make sure I'm right here. Yes, I am right. Okay, so in fact, we're going to do quite a bit of reading today. Remember I told you that, like it says here in verse 8 of Hebrews, thank you, Madeline. Wherefore, let's go to verse 8, okay? Harden not your hearts. We're in Hebrews chapter 3. Harden not your hearts as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore, I was grieved with that generation and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. Now, you should really take note of this, where it says, first of all, God in verse 11 getting so angry that he swears in his wrath. And he says, they shall not enter into my rest. So he declares an oath. He's like putting his foot down and saying, they shall not. So I don't remember any other place in the Bible where it talks about God being this angry, displaying this much wrath. But there it is. And it says, verse 11, they shall not enter into my rest. And we're going to see that these types of ideas spill over into the next chapter in the book of Hebrews. But the core message I'm trying to get across here from Hebrews is how we are saved. We're going to talk about things that challenge people's notions of how you're saved, and and is salvation. Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Is it based on things you do, or is it based on something that Jesus did? So we're going to go through a lot of different things. Can you lose your salvation? That's another important question we answer here, and we also answer, how does one maintain their status with the Lord? How do we maintain our sanctification with the Lord? But in the book of Hebrews, we answer all these things, okay? And the answers are surprising and better than you think they are. I said the answers are surprising and better than you probably think they are. So if you don't like hearing preaching because you're afraid the man's going to condemn you and make you feel worse and make you feel bad, why then that's not the right place for you to be here today, because I go out of my way to make sure that there's no unnecessary scolding of the people that I preach to. There's no unnecessary making people feel bad. At times, some things make us feel bad and make us feel regrettable, okay? But we don't want to stay there. We need to move along. We need to feel strong so we can live this life, and and so we can do the spiritual things and the spiritual and achieve and accomplish spiritually, really. So as we saw in Hebrews chapter 3, take heed, verse 12, take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. Now remember these key words, evil heart. Now evil in the Bible doesn't mean what you think it means, okay? It's evil in the Bible never means a cartoonish kind of a thing. It never means wringing your hands and plotting evil against people, plotting to do bad things. That's not how the Bible defines an evil heart. See, we associate sin with activity, with active things going on, things you're doing. But those aren't always sins. As we've already touched upon from the time I started my sermon today, is we began to reveal that sins are sometimes attitudes, and in this case it absolutely is. And it's an evil heart. It's an evil heart. What's an evil heart? Remember I told you it's about an attitude? An evil heart is an expectation of evil all the time. An expectation of bad. Okay? You'll hear it in the way people talk all the time. Yes, most people have, according to this definition, most people have an evil heart. There's an expectation of negativity, of something bad going to happen into their life. Whenever someone comes around and tells them about, if you come to them telling these people that you're going to have a baby real soon, they go, oh, that's great news. But listen, eventually they grow up to be teenagers. Or they might say something like, you might say, hey, I got some great news. I just got engaged. Oh, well, it's all great until the honeymoon's over. And then you get down to real life and everything goes bad. And they always got to say something negative. Oh, I just bought a new car. Oh, what are the rates on that car, and what is the insurance going to cost you? And it's fun to drive those things for a few years, but then you got to start replacing parts. See, they always got something negative to add to it. That's what the Bible calls an evil heart. So watch it. And that's the kind of attitude that really angers God, right? As it says right here. And that's what he's using. He's using an Old Testament story to try to reveal to you things about your heart, things about your attitude that God would like to see different in you and see changed or improved, okay? So, we don't want to be like these people, the children of Israel, the way they were in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. So we're going to read about it here in chapters 3 and 4 of Hebrews. And by the way, we are going to go back in and we're going to do some copious amount of reading in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. So you should probably break out your Bibles, and if you're going to be following along, because I want to do quite a bit of study. To me, that's how important what we're getting ready to study here is. I know it's not something that your pastor has spent an extensive amount of time on. I know it's a teaching. You've never heard of this passage, perhaps. I know all these things. And for that reason, I feel a little bit intimidated about teaching and preaching it, because it sounds like I've got my private little hobby horse that I'm going to be teaching on. That, here goes Rob off into one of his personal tangents. No, that's not what this is. I promise you that as a man who has studied the Bible in excess of 40 years, that I'm getting ready to tell you that what we're teaching on is one of the most important things that you are ever going to learn about. So that is why I'm placing stress upon it. That's why I'm teaching this passionately. And believe me, I wish I had a bigger room and a little more privacy, didn't have people living right above me here, because I would preach it even more passionately. So it's my prayer that one day I'll have a place, a bigger hall that I can preach in, so I can really preach some of these things the way I feel them. And, out of respect for the other people that live at the apartment complex that I'm from, I'm not going to preach to the full bravado of the way I would really like to preach it. But nevertheless, listen through to my seriousness, to my gravity, and to the passion that I have for this topic. Why do I have such passion for this topic? Because when I see, like myself, people that are well-intentioned, people that would follow God, people that would do things for Him, people that would be open to more of a spiritual life with God, except for the people have told them that their success in their spiritual life is going to come from being able to follow a system of rules that nobody seems to be able to keep. And people don't like to follow God for those reasons, because they know that most places are going to teach things that they sense they cannot keep. So, but let's go down to, and by the way, I hate seeing people. I remember struggling. I remember wanting to follow God. I remember feeling like, gee, if only I was better at following Him. If I wasn't so prone to making mistakes and errors and sins, then maybe I could be one of these people that really follows God successfully. And I kind of disqualified myself. And I don't want you disqualifying yourself here today. I want you to have hope. I want you to know that you are a friend of God, that God is your friend today. That's what I want you to know. And that's what I would like you to know every single day. He is not aligning Himself against you. God is not making Himself you're an enemy for something you did when you were 16 years old, when you were 21 years old, when you were 7 years old. God is not your enemy for those things. God is wanting you to come into a land of rest, into a place of rest in your life, where God takes away all the fears out of your life. That's where He's trying to move you toward. He's not trying to add to your fears. And that's what people think of when they think of the Lord. They hear the name Jesus Christ. They think of, oh, if I ever go toward Him, that's going to bring my life down, because there's going to be things required of me from Him that I can't be able to do, and I won't like doing, or that I won't want to do. Okay? That's why people are all intimidated about Christ. But see, that even comes from an evil heart. You've already made predictions upon God that He's mean, that He's difficult to please, that He's unkind, that He's impatient, that He's unloving, that He doesn't know how to love unconditionally. See, you've made a lot of judgments about God that are unfair. And you probably, if you think about how you feel about God, you fancy Him to be more mean than you yourself are. And that's just not right. We shouldn't have this dim view of God. We shouldn't have this negative, severe look at God. Just because at individual times, God has to become severe. Now, you know yourself, you're a person. How many times in your life would you say that you've had to become severe for even right reasons? Okay? It's not every day, is it? No. But there are times, right, where because you wanted to do something that was right or stand up for the right thing, you decided to be severe. Or maybe you were correcting your children for the right reasons and things, and you got severe. But that doesn't define who you are. Just because, a few times in your life you had to get strict with your children, or you got mad at a spouse or something like that. It's not who you are. It's something you did on a few isolated cases. Well, that's how God is. God has moments where He clearly gets torqued. God gets ticked right off at times, okay? But that's not who He is all the time, okay? But we want to find out, as an indicator, maybe by knowing, you know what a counterpoint is, maybe by knowing what makes God angry, we'll be able to figure out what is the opposite of the things that make God angry, and then we'll be able to figure out what are the things that make Him happy. Okay? It makes common sense, I hope. And so that's what we're kind of doing here today. We're finding out, and that's why we're taught this here, why it's presented and even written about in 4 chapters in the Bible. Okay, you got Hebrews 3 and 4, and then you also got Numbers 13 and 14. Try to remember it and make a real conscious effort to study it. Because one of the bits of good news I want to give you here as you come down with me in verse 16. For some, when they had heard, it did provoke, howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was He grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? It's talking about God being angry with the children of Israel for 40 years. And to whom sware He that they should not enter into His rest, but to them that believed not? So we see that they could not enter because of unbelief. So what I want you, here's the good news I was alluding to. God's will for you is to rest. Not in a boring way, though. We're talking about an internal rest. It isn't talking about just sitting on couches, making sure that you're bored, so that way, because in your mind's eye, you've got it all figured out that God wants you to feel bad. So God wants you to avoid ice cream and cookies, and He wants you to sit on a couch and be bored all day in a state of rest. Nope, that's not what I'm saying. We're saying that in an internal climate, there should always, always, always be in your heart an internal climate of rest. Jesus says to never worry, to be anxious for nothing. The proper state of the Christian's heart at all times is an internal climate of rest, of relaxation, of a feeling that everything is under control, everything in my life is under the watchful care of God, and there's no better place that it can be, and it's up to me to understand that and see that and to believe and accept in it. See, it doesn't matter if I have you guarded by security guards all day long. If I tell you that you're guarded by security guards all day long, and you very well could be, and you don't have the belief that you are, it will still make you act as if you are not protected. Okay? In a similar fashion, if God tells you, look I got all your matters of your life taken care of. Your finances is exactly where I want them to be. Your health is exactly where I want it to be. Your children, I'm looking out for them. I'm looking out for you. Now, you can say, well, some bad things have started happening to my life. Well, the devil's probably meddling with you, and you could probably talk to God about those things. But it's not like God doesn't care. And maybe God is letting some adversity come into your life to remind you of your need of a deeper connection with God. Sometimes God does allow a trial, but a trial is not rejection. A trial is not punishment. A trial is an extension of living. A trial is God getting ready to set you up for blessing, and at the front end of that blessing is a little hurdle of faith for you to see if you have the capacity to just believe that God is looking out for you in the basics of life. And so what happens is God sets everything up. He begins to create a vision for your life. It includes amazing blessings that you can't even imagine. It includes thrills and hope and satisfaction and joy and a love that you currently can't even imagine or fathom that would ever come into your life. But what stops it? What stops the whole process of those things going on in your life? Unbelief. Lack of faith. Here's the blessing waiting for you, and the doorway into it, the knob is of faith. The knob is of belief. And that land is one of rest. I don't mean like a land of... See, people associate rest with boredom. A lot of you people are addicted to drama. And you think that your life lacks sizzle or action or excitement or value or importance or things that should matter in your life unless there is drama. Okay? And so therefore you hear about a life of rest. I know how this feels because I remember hearing about this kind of thing when I was in my late 20s or my teens, and even into my early 30s. I kind of thought, well, gee, a life of, because there's this verse in the Pauline epistles where Paul urges people to pray for a quiet and peaceable life. And I'm saying a quiet and peaceable life, that sounds like nothing is going on, man. It sounds like a boring life. What do I want at the age of 20, at the age of 29? What do I want with a boring life? That's not what it's talking about. God doesn't... See, again, you have to go back to see why you're thinking thoughts like this, because you've already thought of God as someone who doesn't have your best interest that he's looking out for, and that doesn't care about how your life is turning out. That he would be okay with you having a life of boredom. Or, not that he's even okay with it, but more or less that he would prefer if you had a life of boredom. And you look at that thing and you go, gee, I don't know how to be happy and bored at the same time. Well, that's not what it's talking about. It's the kind of rest you get when you know that your needs are provided for, where you know where your food is coming from, where you know that your finances are taken care of, where you know that your relationships are intact, where you know that your health and your body are sound, okay? Those are the types of things God is interested in also giving to you in this lifetime, or to being a part of. And he's always interested in you applying faith and belief to the matters of your life. So verse 19, let me call your attention down to verse 19 here. So we see that they, meaning the people in the book of Numbers here, could not enter in because of unbelief. And enter into where? Verse 18. Enter in